going on, everybody? I'm Chris Dailey, founder of the Sports Court, joined here by none other than the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater's head coach, Kevin Bullis. And for people that don't know UW-Whitewater, many people saw them just in the NFL draft recently with one of your players, Quinn Meinerz. But UW-Whitewater is perhaps Alabama of Division III football with 6 championships in the past 14 years, the most of any team in that span. So, Coach Bullis, thank you so much for joining the show.
Chris, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. And jump straight into this. So you grew up playing football and all sports at a local church called St. Old Church right by you. So can you describe those days playing at the church and what that really taught you about the game of football?
You bet. I mean, Chris, that's you're flashing me way back, man. I grew up in a small town called Elbow Lake, Minnesota. So I didn't grow up in Whitewater. I grew up in a small town called Elbow Lake, and I was lucky. I lived right next door to the St. Olaf Catholic Church, and they had a big, huge yard, and they had a basketball. You know, we could play football there. We could play baseball. We could play hoops in the parking lot. They had a basket for us, so I was in like the epicenter of a town of 1,100. So that doesn't sound very exciting, but we made it exciting. It was our court. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm pretty similar to that. I live about a mile away I'm a big soccer player, so all the soccer fields, a big turf field, and I'm always biking there with my friends, but it's always good, and that's a small town, 1,100, but that's funny. So you were a player at Minnesota Morris College until you got a big injury that left you out and onto the sidelines. So at that time, I can only imagine how you're feeling, which I assume is not very good, but can you describe that transition from being a player to having your coach make you a coach and going on the sidelines and coaching your teammates?
You know, it was really the turn. There's in life. You know, now I sound like a 55-year-old man. In life, you're going to hit different. You're going to hit a Y in the road at times, and you make decisions in life, and at times you maybe don't even think something's going to be that impactful. But at that time, it was for me. Went into my senior year. I had goals of being an All-American. I don't know if I was that good of a linebacker, but I sure thought I was. Let's put it that way. And it's great to have goals like that. And then third game of the season, I broke my arm and my wrist or whatever in 3 places. And so I was crushed because to me, that dream of being an All-American had really been snuffed out. In a lot of ways, or was going to be extremely hard to pull off. Let's put it that way. And so my coach asked me, at that time was a gentleman by the name of Coach Zwiefel, Stan Zwiefel. Stan said, hey, please help Coach Clay. And Clay was my backup at that time. And again, at that point, you're pretty disappointed. You're feeling sorry for yourself. I mean, that's the reality of it. And then I started coaching him, and Clay was playing some good ball, and I felt like I took ownership in that. That was the thing that to me got exciting, is that, I mean, Clay got it done. I don't want to take credit away from him. He got it done. But yet I was given input, and that's, to me, I think every coach can probably tell you a similar story. When the first time that they started coaching somebody and they saw somebody start improving and doing the things that they were bringing up to them and coaching them on, that is really empowering. That is so cool. I'm sure a math teacher would tell you the same thing. I'm sure a history teacher would tell you the same thing. There's that epiphany moment where, like, this is so cool. Yeah. And at that time, I was going to college to be a history teacher, and I was going to coach high school baseball, basketball, football. That was going to be my thing. And that was the moment when I really felt like this college thing is so cool to coach somebody that's 20 years old, 19 years old, that's even older. And not that coaching young kids isn't fun. I have, and we coach youth camps. That is a lot of fun. but it was just a higher level. And that was, to me, the thing that really sucked me into that experience. And it ended up being really a life-altering experience. Had I not broke my arm, I don't know, I'd probably be a history teacher someplace in Minnesota somewhere and coaching all three of the sports and stuff, which would have been great too. But I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. And I'm very fortunate to be the head coach here at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And that was a pinnacle moment.
It's awesome, and it's an amazing story, and it actually led right into my next question, which was, why did you decide to coach college and not high school? So you really answered that, and it's really a great story there. So I love.
Well,
sorry.
I mean, I can add into that. I mean, high school coaches, I have such great admiration for. My wife's a high school coach, so she's a high school volleyball coach. So I live with a coach. That's and so I mean, it's just different levels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing, Chris. It's just different levels, but it's still the same gratification of teaching somebody how to do something, and then seeing them execute it. That is my gravy. It's not the paycheck I get in the bank account. It's that gratification that I get. It's self-gratification, I guess.
Yeah,
totally. From able to teach somebody.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I love interviewing coaches, too, because to me, players are like, okay, you do high school and then you do college and you become a pro, but coaches really have a ladder. And for you, that was being a linebacker coach at Minnesota Morris, like you mentioned, and then at River Falls, and then becoming a defensive coordinator. And what I really want to ask you about is the gig that you had before the one you have now, which is the defensive coordinator at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. You were there with head coach at the time, Lance Leipold. And during that time, I mentioned this in the beginning of the interview, you two won 6 Stag Bowls, which is the pinnacle of Division III football. So what made that team so much better, so much more successful than every other team in the country? And what did you learn in preparation for your time as a head coach when you were defensive coordinator?
Sure, and I need to clarify for your sake, is Brian Borum was our D coordinator. I was the run defense coordinator and special teams coordinator, but whatever, that's just titles. To answer your question, though, I got to make sure I give my friend Brian Borland credit. So, the thing that really stood out to me, a couple things that really just screamed at me. So, I'd been coaching a long time. I already had been coaching 20 years, so it wasn't like I was some rookie coach when I came here in 2008. Some of the things that stood out to me compared to the other places I'd been at, first and foremost, was the culture. It was just an amazing culture within our community. I mean, Chris, it's amazing, bud. If you ever come out to Wisconsin and want to attend an amazing, fun football experience, Perkins Stadium, our stadium, it's amazing. I mean, we average, typically we're number 1 or number 2 in the country in Division III for attendance. There's FCS schools. There's FBS schools that would love to have our attendance. We fill the perk. We pack the perk. It's a phrase. It's a thing. People show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and start our parking lot's filled with cars at 9 o'clock in the morning for a 1 or 2 o'clock game. And it's just that really blew my mind. There's such a sense of support even outside the program, by our athletic administration, by our chancellor, but even more so our community. Southeast Wisconsin, which is Milwaukee, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. And here we are, this little town, and people come to us to watch our team play. And the students show up. That was the first thing that just screamed at me, was that sense of culture that drew people towards us. And that sets a standard. It set a standard for our team as well. The other culture that stood out to me was the standard in our team, in the sense of our standard of process. I'm sure you've talked to a lot of coaches. You've heard coaches use that word process. It is of the essence. Is the process is everything that you put into being who you are as an individual. And for each player, each coach, it's an individual decision. It's an individual decision to get better every day, to get better every day. We talk to our players about getting better. Can you get 3% better every day? And what that means is this, and we break it down. Can you get 3% better every day? And you can. It's a doable number. It's not 5, it's not 10%. 3% is doable. And if you can stack 100 days of 3% better on top of each other, dang, how good are you? How good are you? And so we even break it down even further when we talk about the 3%. Can you get 1% better as a Warhawk football player today? Can you do that today? Can you get 1% better as a UW student, as an accounting major, as a business major, as a teacher education major, as a criminal justice major, whatever it may be? Can you get 1% better as a man, as a person, as a human being? Does that make sense? And if you look at life every single day as getting a little bit better, get a little bit better. And you don't worry about 2 days from now. You don't worry about even tomorrow. You worry about today. And so when we say get better, it's all about taking care of little details in your process. So what are the little details? The little details are this. When you walk into the classroom, whether it's a football classroom, a linebacker meeting, or whether it's a biology classroom, stare in the eyes of the teacher. Stare in his eyes or her eyes. That may sound silly to you, Chris. When you stare in somebody's eyes and they're talking, whether they're talking to the class or talking to you, you actually hear them better. You learn better. It's a learning thing. It's all about learning better. It's sitting in the front row. Believe it or not, everybody, young guys, when I was your age, man, sit in the back row. No, sit in the front row. Less distractions. Take notes. Break a light sweat taking notes. Try to write down every dang word the teacher is talking about when they're talking about the Magna Carta or they're talking about pronouns. I mean, whatever it is they're teaching you. And that's the things that we talk about here. And that was the culture here, was the attention to detail of those little things day to day. Whether it was in the meeting room, whether it was in the classroom, whether it was on the football field, was our attention to detail of the little basic fundamental things in life. And I love this phrase. If you concentrate on the ordinary things, you will do extraordinary things. It will result in extraordinary things. And that was the piece that really screamed at me. And then the third piece to me of your whole question, great players. Great players. We recruited great players that came here and they made us coaches look really good, Chris. They made us look really good, pal. And but when you can teach them how to learn better, and you take a great athlete and you recruit great athletes and great people, because it is about recruiting great people that want to learn. Really amazing things happen. 6 national championships happen.
That's great, and all the ingredients equated to this huge recipe of national championships. And I did the 2021 Rose Bowl, and I asked Nick Saban a question about just media pressure and keeping, especially now with social media, with Twitter, with Instagram, all these platforms that guys like Mac Jones can see. A lot of bad articles, a lot of bad news, and even good stuff. You don't want to get your head in the wrong places, your mind in the wrong places. And Nick Saban says that's probably the biggest thing he stresses at Alabama, and that's one of the biggest things you stress there. And I had a great time listening to that. And when you said listen to your eye, when you look at somebody's eyes, all of a sudden I was more focused. I was really, in the zone. So just little things like that make a huge, huge difference. And it's definitely made a difference for you, because after Lance Leipold left and he took the job at Buffalo and many of his assistants followed, you were offered, but you decided not to go. So I have 2 questions for you. One, what made you stay at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and not join Lance and all the other assistants in going to Buffalo? And 2...
that was a tough decision, Chris. I mentioned earlier about you hit those whys in the world, in your life, that, hey, am I going this way or am I going that way? And obviously, being a Division I coach and going with my close friends, Coach Leipold and the other assistants that went with them, they were all very good, dear friends. But I decided not to. And the would have meant probably a bigger paycheck. I know it would have been. But that's not why I'm doing this. I did have a desire and had a desire at that time to be a head coach. And I made the right decision for me because the opportunity to be able to lead a program like this. I mean, good, Chris, it's crazy, man. I got to pinch myself every morning to remind myself, dang, I'm at Whitewater. And that is so cool. And I'm sure Coach Saban has to pinch himself about being at Alabama. I mean, and when you're at places like that have a history, it is so cool. And it's very humbling, to be very honest with you. And yeah, I wanted to be a head coach, and I figured I had it was a gamble. I had the interview for the job and all those things. There was no guarantee, but it was a gamble that I wanted to take. And really fortunate to have had that opportunity over the past. I think next year will be my 7th year, so very fortunate.
Yeah, it's definitely paid off because it's not many times you see Division III players, and with all due respect, but it's usually just Division I, Division I, Division I. Every now and then, I've seen some European guy, and it's usually a marketing move, get drafted into the NFL. However, this year, Quinn Meinerz, he went to the Senior Bowl, and I absolutely love it. So you've had many great things happen for you as a coach. You've been 57-9. You went to a national championship game as a head coach. Yet developing an NFL player, that's something not many Division III coaches can say they've ever done. And with his determination, his willingness to get better, to lose weight, because I saw him, he was watching tape and he didn't like how big of his gut was at the time, and they called him the gut. So, he wasn't too happy with that film, and that's what all the coaches saw. So how was it for you to watch this kid develop and watch this kid prosper as a college player and now a professional player and see all this unprecedented success?
It's first thing for Quinn, we're very fortunate. Quinn is not the first of the Warhawks to be in the NFL. In fact, there's been many that have preceded him. I mean, just going back to 2007. I mean, I won't even go back even further than that. There, you could go back further, but Derek Stanley and was a great wide receiver here, and Matt Blanchard was a great quarterback here. Casey Casper had some tryouts and things as a long snapper, and Nate Truin, who, I'm sorry, I skipped a guy, and least of a guy I should skip is Jake Kummerow, who's presently with the Buffalo Bills. So it's been fortunate that we have this tradition of being able to draw athletes here and the scouts know to check out Whitewater. They do. They know to check out Whitewater because there's been a history of guys that have come here, and that, to me, that's really where Quinn's story starts. Was the guy after Jake Kummerow, and that was Nate Truin, who was a center for us. And I know Nate's had some tryouts here this summer as well. Who's most recently with the Rams, and he. When Quinn was a sophomore, there was all the NFL scouts came in to see Nate Truin. Nate was a senior that year. And one of the scouts said to me, we're talking about Nate, and he's at our practice, and he's watching Nate practice, and he's impressed with Nate. And he was actually with the Broncos. I was a scout with the Broncos. A guy by the name of Scott DeFazio. And Scott comes walking over to me towards the back end of the practice and says, who's the big guy? Who's 77 with the big gut? Because Quinn always had this thing about rolling up his jersey into his pad, so his gut was always out. And so that's kind of where the thing came from, because that's how he practices. And I said, well, that's Quinn Meinerz, and Quinn is a guy that I will predict that you'll be back here in a couple of years to be watching him. So he was really the first scout to really kind of, and then really after that point, Scott was the first guy into fall camps that year. All the other scouts started asking me about who's 77. And so Quinn really got on people's radar early on the NFL scouts' radars. And so it was really exciting. Over time, we were really concerned for Quinn last summer because our season was canceled in the fall. We weren't sure if we were even going to have a spring season. And so here's Quinn going into a senior year, Chris, and we're like, oh man, this is not good. For him to lose that senior year to play in front of the scouts. And so Quinn, back in late July, early August last summer, we had a Zoom meeting with some of the scouts. That's how the scouts work, is they typically will come to your facility, but last year they had to do everything through Zoom like you and I are doing now. And the Detroit Lions scout said, hey, I'm going to email out that I got this meeting with Quinn Meinerz. And so some other scouts might show up. So I'm anticipating, Chris, I thought there'd be 5, 6, 7 other scouts maybe. You know what I mean? I think that, I was thinking maybe they'll remember Quinn when they saw him 2 years ago. Well, I flipped on that Zoom meeting, and I looked at the number at the bottom. There was 37 people. And I'm like, oh, my God. That's the moment that I knew that Quinn wasn't going to get missed. Or at least I was feeling better. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to say I didn't know he was going to be completely missed. But I knew he was going to get some people's attention. So it was very exciting. We talked with Quinn. Quinn, hey, if he'd made a decision that if his stock was high enough to get drafted, he was going to go into the draft. If it wasn't, he was going to stay and play. Actually, this coming fall. Mm-hmm. Well, back in November, I believe it was, he got an invitation to the East-West Shrine game. He got an invitation to the NFLPA game, even though they didn't have games. He got an invitation. And then the Reeses had him on a wait list. He was the next guy in. Well, fortunately, he got in. And that's where it blew up for Quinn. I mean, all the social media, the
NFL Network.
It just took off. I mean, ESPN's interviewing him, NFL Network's interviewing him, because he went down to the Reeses and he took advantage of his opportunity. The moment was not too big for Quinn. And if there's something I could tell you about Quinn, Chris, he is authentic. He is real. He does not get distracted by, you talked about what Coach Saban mentioned, social media. He's not. He is not. He is so focused in on his process as a player to do what he needs to do in the weight room, to do what he needs to do with his nutrition. I mean, that guy watches every calorie. He documents all the calories he puts into his body. He doesn't put anything into his body that's going to be harmful. He doesn't put alcohol into his body. I mean, he is he monitors his sleep. I mean, the guy, he's going to make sure he gets his 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Those all sound like little things, but those are the things within a process of being a great athlete and being disciplined. I mean, I guarantee you J.J. Watt does the same thing, and LeBron James. I mean, how long has that guy played the game?
That guy, he puts $1 million into his body every year, and
I mean, they take care of their bodies, and they're not taking it for granted that they have this opportunity. And I'm not saying Quinn is as good as LeBron or even as good as J.J. Watt, but those processes that those guys are doing, that's the type of thing that Quinn's doing. And that's the type of things that I recommend to anybody that's got a passion to be the best soccer player they can be, the best gymnast they can be, the best football player, best basketball player. Take care of your body and eat right, train right, sleep right. Simple, basic things in all reality.
Yeah, definitely. And I saw J.J. Watt actually trains up in Wisconsin a lot, and He's from around there, so he went to Wisconsin. He was a Badger, and I read that somewhere about Quinn because I was reading about Quinn, and when he was my age, because I'm going to be a sophomore in high school, Quinn, he would double every meal he had because he wanted to gain enough weight to play varsity football as a sophomore. So when he was in the lunch line freshman year, he would grab 2 of everything, and instead of having 1 chocolate milk, he'll have 2. So it's stuff like that that makes you become the 98th overall selection in the draft.
Yep, not even a question. Not even a question. He was passionate. We all want to win. We all want to get a trophy. We all want to be the champion. But the question is, do we want to pay the price? Does that make sense? Are we willing to say, hey, it's time to go to bed? Yep, because I need to get 8 hours of sleep. Or should I sit up and game for another couple more hours? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is. It's sitting down and eating a meal and saying, boy, I could eat that chocolate cake and have 3 pieces. Or is it saying, no, I'm just going to have a little piece of chocolate cake. You got to have a little piece. And then make sure I get my greens, my proteins, my carbs. You know what I mean? And it's being willing to make that commitment to your process, to yourself, to pursue that win, that championship, that trophy. That's always the big question. Who has the motivation? And that's the thing with Quinn. I know this is going to sound like a big word, and it is. It's called intrinsic motivation. We all have it. It's the thing inside of us. And to simplify it, I call it this. It's that thing that burns in your belly. It is that thing. And for Quinn, it's a big fire because he's got a big belly. And it's that chip on your shoulder. It's that motivation that you use to push yourself to be uncomfortable. And because it's easy for us to want to be comfortable. Does that make sense, Casey or Chris? And that, to me, if there's something anybody can learn from Quinn, is being true to that intrinsic motivation, that motivation inside of you that makes and pushes you to accomplish that win, whatever that win is for you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely 100%. And you have a lot of great words to say. And I just have one last question for you, which is, last year, as you mentioned with Quinn, because you were really questioning how many scouts are going to come because Quinn hasn't played in a year. He was questioning if he would even be drafted. So it's been a very tough year and a half. How tough was it for you to maintain a sense of unity within the program at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater when most of the events that you could do were just like things that you and I are doing right now via Zoom?
I'll tell you that was the toughest part. I'll tell you the toughest part for us, and now I'm talking about us, I'm saying coaches, and for me, going back to what I was saying earlier, when I was coaching Clay Rosa how to do something right, and he did it right, he did it really well, and we couldn't have that. We didn't have that. I'm sitting in this office building, and it is empty because they didn't even want coaches on campus. I shouldn't have been on campus, but I would sneak in here. And but not having that contact with the players. And that was hard on them. That was hard on them, and they would tell you that. And anybody would tell you that to be a part of a team, I'm sure you felt the same way. If your soccer team couldn't play soccer, it's the camaraderie. It's being with your crew. It's being with the guys. It's being with your, team. That was the toughest part for all of us. As much as, yes, I missed the games last fall, we were fortunate. We were able to work with our players. Our first practice with our players was September 8th. And it was it wasn't a normal practice. It was in pods. It was a training session. But we were with the guys. And we were together. You know what I mean? And I think that's the coolest part that you have and anybody has of being a part of a team. It's being with your crew. And when you're with your crew, there's just nothing like it. There is nothing like it. And that may be the reason I've stayed and I've been coaching for over 33 years, is because I just love being with the crew. It is. There's just something really special about that.
Yeah, 100%. And I can definitely attest to that with high school soccer. it was crazy. We always had, the check-ins and all that. It was nuts. But when you get onto the track and when you get onto the field, even though they told us 6 feet apart, it would never happen because you're on a very condensed track to run around for about a mile. So, eventually we're going to find our way. And it was really a crazy season for everybody. And it's just amazing what you've been doing. And I just love that story about Quinn, about the 37 people that came into that meeting. And all the stories you shared today were just phenomenal. I really love talking to you, and I just appreciate the time that you've spent with me, and I can't wait to get this interview uploaded and show everybody.